Vikings.
Find my cleats.
Did you go to the game?
Good evening, and welcome to Magers Quinn. My name is Sarah, and I'm one of the booksellers here. I'm so pleased that you're joining us to celebrate Karen Engstrom's new book, Shadowland. A few housekeeping things before we get on with the show. Tonight you'll hear from Karen in conversation with Sarah Stonich. Then there will be a time at the end of the program for any audience questions. After Q&A, please allow Karen to move to the signing counter, which is the glass display case you pass on your way into the store. You may line up there to say hello and get a signed copy of the book tonight. If you do buy a book here this evening, you're not only supporting our authors, but also a locally owned independent bookstore, and we cannot thank you enough. Finally, please allow me to introduce our guests. Karen Engstrom writes short stories and historical fiction. The Fox is the first of the trilogy set in the 1950s northern Minnesota, while Shadowland is the second in the series of the trilogy. Her short stories have been published in Minnesota Stories, a collection of 28 fiction stories about the state we love, Minnesota Not So Nice, 18 Tales of Bad Behavior, Wink Magazine, and the Star Tribune. When she's not writing, Karen spends time making handcrafted fountain pens, inks for a family company, Andurilium Inks. She is a native of Illinois and currently lives in Independence, Minnesota with her longtime partner and their ever-napping dog. Sarah Stonich has written many books, including Vacationland and Fishing. Her books do all the talking for her. Please join me in welcoming Karen Engstrom and Sarah Stonich.
So I first met Karen. She came to a reading that I was doing in Cloquet and handed me a bottle of ink and a manuscript. And this happens to authors quite frequently, not necessarily with a bottle of ink, but something. And they want you to read their book and respond to it. And if there was enough time in the day, I would do that with every book, but there's not. But there was something about the first 2 pages of this book that made me realize, yes, I can commit to this, and I thought it was lovely. And I gave the ink to my son, who's an artist and has those kinds of pens. So that's just how we met. And I didn't know if you were writing before that or not. Can you tell me a little bit about your writing history?
Do we need these?
Yeah,
do you think we need
these?
these?
Okay.
Is this okay?
Yes.
No, it's gotta be closer. Okay. I hadn't written anything at all until things happened in life and I had to give up my cabin. It was also a time when I lost my job. And it was 2008. Lots of people lost their job. Anyways, it was a cathartic experience to write the first book. I lost this place that I love. I like the running. And I was afraid that I would lose my memories of it too. And so I sat down and wrote my first draft in 6 weeks. It took 10 or more years to get it published, but at least I got all those thoughts down. So that's how it
Losing
started.
a cabin is a big deal, and I actually wrote a whole memoir about losing a cabin. Mine was a little bit east of yours, on 6 Mile, near the town of Tower. And we spent lots and lots of time on Lake Vermilion, which makes it really interesting to be reading your locations. And in fact, my family owned an island there called Taylor's Island.
I know Taylor's Island.
That was my grandfather's island.
As a matter of fact, when I looked closely on one of the maps, it says Stonich.
It might say Stonich Island as
Yeah.
well. So,
I
who
was gonna
knew?
bring that up.
Yeah. So what are you doing what are you currently working on? Are you on number 3?
Yes. It's called Bear Season, and now that this one is out and done, I can't turn my head off on number 3. It's I'm back there all the time.
Well, lucky you. I mean, so many of us have, especially now, it's hard to concentrate enough to get into the headspace of being able to write. I know I have a lot of difficulty, but I think for a lot of us too, getting into it is a place to go. And it's a safe place and it's our place. And I have a group of writer friends and we get together once a week and just write together. And they're all mystery writers. And one I'm having an event with on Thursday, which I'll talk about later. But one of the things that we talk about a lot, especially in these times, is sort of the importance of getting together and supporting each other and other writers. And we just get together and we work. And it's so much easier than sitting home alone. We just go to a cafe or whatever. We don't look at each other's work. We don't read it. And we're not judging it. It's just kind of co-play writing. So that's one of the strategies that I've been using as a writer. And I'm just wondering, it sounds like you don't need to have much in the way of strategy to write right now. It sounds like you're inspired.
Yes, I can't turn my head off. I've never had a time when I couldn't think of what to write next. My problem is I don't have time to write. Excuse me.
Bingo. I know exactly what you mean.
But I did just come back from a 4-day with Trish, my friend, who went with me, up to Angle Inlet where half of this book takes place. And we stayed at Prothero's Post Resort and stayed with another writer. Her name is Kelly Knight. And I wrote the bear season.
And the cabin that you had earlier, was that one that really inspired everything in these two books?
Yes. The cabin that Carl and Elsa live in for the summer, that's,
Was it a family cabin?
my dad built it pretty much
Oh.
like what's in the box.
Right,
It's
okay.
The chronology is there.
Yeah. So clearly, northern Minnesota is a huge inspiration for you. And actually, when I heard you were in Angle Inlet, I thought for sure you must know Carla Hagen. But I go to Rainy Lake a lot too, so we go kind of back and forth there. But there's something about the character of northern Minnesota, and I grew up in Duluth, and my grandparents were from Elian Tower, and in fact, they were the tailor and the seamstress, and had 10 kids. So we have a huge family history there. The name doesn't even exist anywhere anymore there because the Iron Range can be really cruel and not a place to be able to live as an adult. It's a tough way to make a living. It's a really tough place to be an artist, or a writer, or anything but, blue collar or supportive. And that's one of the things that I really like to write about is there's a lot written about the beauty of northern Minnesota and not all that much written about the character of the people who live there. And it feels to me like it's such a difficult place to live. You have to be able to rely on your neighbors. It is literally the end of the road. And so you have to find ways to get along with each other, even if you may have a lot of differences. Clearly right now that's in everybody's mind, but these are really difficult places to live. They're almost a character in themselves. And I was just wondering what your thoughts about the region are and what inspires you about it.
Well, the people that were my immediate neighbors and so forth, because I was only there, really, I've never lived there year round. All those 60 plus years, I was only there in the summer or visited during the winter because my parents retired there. So they had a great support group and lots and lots of interaction with the locals, and everybody knew each other. Personally, I didn't, because away from there, but, and was only there in the summers. But you're right, the through lines of like the Gruben family, or the Stonich family, or the Nemesty, am I saying that right? The people that own Erinson's, they've been there
Oh,
forever and ever and
yeah.
ever. The through lines of those families is very, very integral to the success of the lake and this, how everybody enjoys it.
Well, and I love to hear about the characters, especially when you're really going to go into some depth in these northern Minnesota characters in this place that can be so cruel, and the weather, just the weather, and all of those things. And I was wondering what your ties are now to that that area.
Almost none,
Yeah.
just in my head.
Yeah, and don't you think
Very,
that,
very tight in my head.
yeah, and maybe I feel like sometimes that's because it was taken away from me. That my family heritage, just doesn't belong up there anymore. We lost our cabin, as you lost your cabin. We lost ours to a highway. But you get this it's almost ingrained, It's almost, I feel like I've been branded by this place, and it's really a love-hate relationship. Because it can be really difficult, and people can be really difficult. And then turn the coin, and they're just the loveliest people you can ever imagine. So I miss it up there, but I'm kind of glad that I don't have to face it at the moment, especially as winter approaches. But will you be going up there to do any research or writing?
Who knows? I don't have any plans, immediate plans to do that. But
Are there topics that you need to research for what you're working on in this next book?
It is going to include some interesting, I hope, information about land and who owns it, and the whole, we're talking about this, we're talking about fair season. Who owns the land and who can take it away from you. I.e. the city of Virginia has huge swaths of the city actually moved and dug out for mining and houses, and just like you lost your cabin to the road, it's sub-theme in fair season.
Well, I did write down some questions to ask you, and I'll pick them out very randomly. I know I asked you for questions, and I thought, well, that was just lazy of me.
They were so generic, I figured you could ask anything.
Oh, I was wondering, this is just like a structural thing, in that I hadn't seen this before and found it kind of unique, that just these historical snippets of information, kind of like these little Wikipedia bits that are in here. So if you haven't read the book, they just show up like this, and they're informational. This one happens to be about the immigration of the Swedes, and where they settled. What was your idea in including things like that?
Well, my critique over here, Bob and Brian, were very, very instrumental in helping get both the Fox and Shadowland in print. They were in had a critique group, and is that a good word for a critique group? Yes. Okay. And we would meet, and they'd tell me, no, you can't have all that detail. Oh, that's too much history. That's so boring. You can't have all that stuff in there. And I try to weave it in, the conversation, and somebody in that day talking about something that happened 70 years ago just didn't work. So I said, what the heck? I like this. I want to put it in there because I find it interesting, and it gives the background of where they are and what they're doing. So I did it.
I I was also really interested in what other crime writers that influence you or that you like. Who might they be?
Well, of course, William Kim Kruger. Who couldn't want to write with him? These two guys, as Brian would remember, Rob Young as the author. But one of my favorite authors is Paul Dorian. He writes the same kinds of things that we do, or murder mysteries, it's set in Maine. And the main character is not a park ranger, but he was like a park ranger.
What about the writing? Or the
because
structure or story that he does?
He has a lot about family, and he also loves where he's writing about, just like I do, and you do. We want to talk about that place. It becomes a character. The lake is a character. He writes a lot about things that happen on the water, through the water, and that's what
So he gets the nature into it. This is just an aside, but I have a lot of readership in Maine because of my book Vacation Land, and then they open it and realize this is not about Maine, this is about Minnesota. So I'm sure some people have felt really cheated, and that's too bad. Sorry.
As long as they bought the book.
Well, yeah, that's fine with me. And then there's another book out there with the same name, which happens quite frequently. So you really, when you name your books, you have to, you
You're
have to
telling me
pay
the
a little bit of
Fox.
attention. The Fox, yeah. And was Shadowland something that had many other contender,
No.
titles? Oh, that's good. I would have thought so. I would, with a word like that. Hmm. And then I was going to ask you, but we can just chat on too about writing and whatever, and also questions like, let's make it a conversation. One thing that I did notice about your work is your settings are, very real, but then you also don't hide their identities. You're talking about the actual places in your. Do you regret that? You just rolled your eyes.
I had many people tell me I shouldn't use the exact people and the exact places. But to be honest, those people lived 70 years ago and probably died 50 years ago. And I take license with what happened to them, but I don't make them bad guys. I don't make them do any crimes in it's like writing about exaggerating Robert Kennedy or something, They're a person that you know and.
Or know of? You mean
Yeah,
like Ernest Oberholzer
I
or
knew all
something?
these people,
Okay.
so. Just like any.
And do you hear from their families?
Well, the book's just out, we'll see.
Okay. So it's mostly just this book.
Right, and I did change the name in The Fox. The man's name was Jake Jacobson, and I wrote I guys, and if you're from up there and you can't figure out who that is,
Right. Yeah,
the artist on the island.
Right. Most people probably can figure out who that is.
There was so much history around, in particular, Dr. Bradley, that I just couldn't, if I had made up all of that Chicago history and all the other stuff, I couldn't have used all that if I had made a fake name for it. So.
Well, one of the reasons I bring it up is because quite often, I don't very often name my places at all. Because you'll invariably hear back from somebody that, no, there's not a stop sign on 2nd and 3rd in that town. So I renamed everything. My Lake Vermilion is called Cypress. And all of my towns are called something else, unless they're kind of in the distance in a subplot, then I can say Duluth or here or there. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I want my readers to have the same experience that I have when I read, and that's to let my imagination do all of the work for me. And I think maybe there's two different kinds of readers. And I think I'm that kind of reader, and I'm also that kind of writer. And it sounds like, now when you're reading, do you want to get more of those kinds of true, like the facts and the true stories?
Yes, I think I do. For instance, in the Fox, that initial, that whole scam of, building a community and all the lots in the community center and all that stuff that was going to happen on this remote island, way the heck up there, was for real, and it was a legitimate scam back then. And I find that kind of thing so interesting that I wanted to read it in, and I changed those people's names, by the way. So do you consider your writing historical fiction? Since you changed the
Really,
names?
there's only one of my books that's historical fiction, and that's These Grand Islands, and that takes place in the 1930s in northern Minnesota. And I had to do a lot of research regarding the mines, and then just what I could look up in the archives. But I really did want to have the reader doing their own placement, and I realized we all read very differently. I did write one nonfiction book, and I'll never do it again. But one of the things that when I have used names in places, editors usually always kind of get a hold of me and say, wait a minute, you might not want to use that Chicago name because there was a family of that name. So you didn't get any of that.
I overwrote it.
Okay.
I got that advice, but
Oh, okay.
good or bad, we'll see. They can sue me if they want. They can get all the royalties or whatever.
Yeah, royalties. I just got a royalty check, and I'm gonna buy a skirt. Just in case anybody is thinking that this is a lucrative thing.
They usually think buying postage stamps.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Coffee.
Coffee, yeah. I was wondering, I actually think I would like to ask this of everybody because it's such a huge issue that's come up right now, and I know a number of writers who are getting not involved in it, but they're using it for small bits, and that's AI. And it's great for research, it's great for so many things on the non-creative side of things, and I have used it to set me a timeline to finish my next book, for instance, and what I should have done in certain places. I also do have writer friends who have used it, because they hate writing dialogue or something like that. And I have really mixed emotions about that. And I'm just wondering what you're thinking of the whole AI explosion and how it's affecting so much of what we do. And as writers, I don't know if many of you know this, there's a huge IA company, and they use many, many thousands of titles to teach their systems how to write. And they use 3 of my titles, so I'm part of this big class action suit. I'm hoping that it's enough. It's a $1.5 billion result that has been awarded.
Maybe you can buy a blouse.
I might be able to buy a blouse then. That's it. Yeah. So do you use AI in any aspect, in any way, I guess?
I would say, I use Grammarly, not to write, because you can write with it, but just to correct, to find all the commas that I missed and things like that. Right, I don't have it right in front of me.
I'm just,
I have enough words myself.
don't we? And you know what you said earlier about you have too many ideas, it's the opposite of writer's block, and this is something that I suffer as well. I have 10 projects and none of them are getting done. How is it that you're able to be so focused and stay on track? You're writing book number 3 and it sounds like that's what you're doing.
That is all I'm doing, yeah, in my head, yes. Somewhere along the line, and it's a long run, I learned how to concentrate. and used it in many ways. For instance, physical things too. I used to get migraines, and I would concentrate. It's a little self-meditation or whatever, and just make them go away. I don't need that. I don't want that. I want to think about this. And so I make myself think about what's the next thing that person will do. Oh, okay, but that doesn't. And then I start thinking of all the permutations of who should be doing what and how they're going to get there, and kind of know what the end is, and then I know what the end is.
So you're a pantser.
I'm not a written down plotter, but I do know what's going to happen. I don't sit down with a typewriter. The big board.
That dates us.
Yeah, I don't sit down and just go, oh, let's see what happens. But I know what I'm going to write about.
So you do have a structure. You've got a beginning, middle, and an end. What's your favorite part of writing? Just because most people hate the middle, I'm always curious.
I wouldn't say the middle's bad. I think the funnest part is figuring them all out. I love puzzles. And, hey, come on.
Room in the front. Room in the front. People who are late have to sit in the front, and it's absolutely okay. Oh, no, you don't, because it's Memorial Day. Oh. I'm sorry, it's Indigenous Peoples' Day, and I went to put money in my, yeah, so it's free parking today.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah. Where were we?
I don't know. I concentrate.
Yeah, how do you, can you teach me how to do that?
Can we line up? And all
Yeah.
It's, you know, when you lay in bed and you toss and turn and you're worried about this and you're worried about your kids and you're worried about this, that, and the other, I go, stop thinking about that. Think about what that person is going to do next. And
That's
I
so
just
much more
make my
positive.
brain think what I want it to think, not what I don't.
That's gotta be maturity, or and the times, because I think for me and a lot of my writer friends, the give a shit factor on so many other things that are happening right now, you can only do so much, you can only watch so much news, you can only worry about your kids so much, it's like, there's, at some point you have to own your creativity and honor it and do it. And it used to feel like taking time to do that was a guilty pleasure. And now it seems so necessary.
It's definitely necessary for me. I almost feel compulsive about writing at this stage. I can't believe I waited so long to write.
I, myself as well, I didn't publish a book until I was 42. In some ways I wish I had done it sooner, but then what would I have had to write about? I didn't go to school for writing. If I had, at 22 come out of a program like Iowa, what would I have to say? I think you gotta get out there, and maybe it takes as many decades old as we are, which I'm assuming are very close, to have that life experience. So is there much of your own life experience, or is it just your observation of life that's more in this book?
All of 50 to 75% of the vignettes or parts of the stories in both books are actual. They happened to me. I was the little girl in the yellow sweater. I'm writing from those snippets of life that I want to remember, and that I think are unique enough that maybe other people might enjoy them.
And do you feel that way about the landscape too?
Oh, of course. It's makes me a little sad that you have to market the book to where it's written about. But wouldn't it be great if 2% of the people in Florida could read it and get a view of something different?
Yeah, when my first book came out, I had a New York publisher, and they knew so little about the Midwest that instead of sending me from St. Paul to New York or wherever it was, they sent me leaving from St. Louis because they'd never heard of St. Paul. Did not know that. But on the other hand, my first book sold a lot of foreign rights, and I was so surprised at how many people would write to me and talk about Minnesota. They had heard about it, they knew a cousin's father had emigrated to there, and that kind of reading, reading across oceans is one of my favorite things to do. But it's just it's a wonderful thing to know that I was at least able to shine a little light on northern Minnesota to readers in France and Italy and Portugal.
Yeah.
Greece. That was the one. Yeah, I think that royalty check was enough to buy a cashmere sweater.
Nice.
And that was all.
How on earth did you market it over there?
Well, Little Brown was my publisher.
Okay.
Yeah. So normally how it works is your publisher has or your agent has a sub-agent, and they'll sell foreign rights. It's getting harder and harder to have that happen. It usually only happens with the larger presses or very, very good literary agents. We end up doing a lot of the marketing, which I find really hard to do and distasteful, and I hate it. But I also know very, very successful mystery writers who spend part of their day doing things online, which would hurt me to actually do.
Yes.
And they're very successful. And I can't bring myself to do it. I didn't have to do it when I started out. It was a thing that evolved over time, that publishers don't have that sort of money in their marketing departments anymore. So, more and more of the responsibility of getting the readings and the tours, going to the libraries, kind of all falls on the head of the author these days. So it's a lot of hats to wear. It sounds like you're finding you're having to wear a marketer hat.
Yes. But these events are really fun. I mean, it's fun to meet new people and open their eyes maybe to something a little different.
Is there anything that you would want to read from the book? We didn't really set up anything, or we can just turn it into a conversation.
What's our time frame? I mean, I do have a little. I can do a 5-minute reading. We got thumbs up from Sarah.
All right.
Some of you have already read this, so you'll have to or heard it. Oh, that would be good. that too loud? Well, this part that I'd like to read you takes place in 1950. Parts of the book take place way before that, in the 20s and 30s. And Carl Swanson, along with two of his friends, Irv and Preston, they are on a 3 or 4 day fishing trip up to Lake of the Woods. Irv is an older guy, and his family has a fishing camp lodge up on Lake of the Woods, and he has a floatplane. He goes up there frequently. And he invited Carl and Preston to join him. Preston is an elderly preacher from Chicago, evangelical kind of preacher, but he actually was a Hebrew. Anyway, so they decided to leave early, to go home early, because Preston is not feeling well. And I'll just start. With the preparations to leave complete, Carl and Irv stood together at the water's edge. They both noticed the gathering clouds to the northwest. "Does that look like anything much to you?" asked Carl. "Well, I've learned never to take the nice weather for granted, and not to think that you can outrun the bad. Then again, if you wait for bad weather to pass, you're kind of a pussy, if you know what I mean." They were leaving early because of the old man, but the potential for bad weather was not good at all, Carl thought. He headed to the lodge to bring Preston and his belongings down to the plane. As he walked into the main room, he looked around to take in its character, thinking about the bootlegging days and the crazy illegal things that happened here. "Preston, are you ready to go?" Carl called out. No answer. "Preston!" Carl went down the hall. He tapped on the bedroom door. "Preston, are you okay?" No answer. He opened the door and found Preston lying on his back, coat and shoes on, hands folded across his chest. Carl rushed over and shook his shoulder. "Preston! Preston!" The old man opened his eyes and slowly sat up. "Yes, that's me. What's all the fuss about? I just closed my eyes for a moment to contemplate a particularly bothersome question while I waited. Lord Almighty hasn't called me to his side yet. Are we ready to go then? Be a good man and carry my luggage for me, would you?" "Sure, here, I've got it," said Carl as he reached for the suitcase. "Let's stop in the kitchen for a minute. I'll bet you forgot to take your medicine this morning. And Jane said you sure have to take that capsule with the Dramamine so you won't be sick on the plane." They stopped in the kitchen and Preston popped the capsules into his hand and then popped them in his mouth and drank the water that Carl handed him. Together, arms linked, Carl and Preston made their way down to the plane. Carl took Preston's luggage with him as he climbed over the passenger seat and got in the back into a little jump seat. He stared, Irv helped the old man in and buckled him up. He stood for a minute checking the clouds and the trees and the wind, and he stared at the darkening horizon to the northwest. As they taxied away from the dock, Irv said, "Damn, I left a couple of Cubans in the sideboard. I meant to bring them. I mean, we gotta smoke them before we die." Carl leaned around the pilot seat and said, "Sorry, Irv, I can't hear you back here." "Oh yeah, well, nothing important. Let's get this baby in the air before that front gets any closer." Irv guided the nose of the plane into the wind and revved the engine, and they started to gain speed. After one long minute, they'd be in the air. Carl leaned forward between the seats to speak to Preston. "Isn't this exciting? Boy, I wish I knew how to fly a plane." Preston's head was forward, his chin pressed to his chest. "Preston, are you sleeping?" Carl leaned close to Preston's face to see his eyes and was greeted with a distinct smell, kind of like almonds. He'd smelled it before, and in that instant he was with his platoon in northern Italy. They were on patrol when they came across 2 German officers who were making their way on foot to Austria. They shouted for them to stop, but the Germans started to run. They were just far enough away that they had time to sit down, so with steady hands, they could get the cyanide capsule from their secret pocket in their uniform and pop it in their mouth. Carl ran to the closest one, kneeled down to try to save him, to fish the deadly pill out of the man's mouth, but if he could. The German's last breath smelled like Preston's now. Carl jerked away in surprise and back to reality, practically falling into Irv's lap and shoving Irv's hand on the control stick sharply to the left. Both men shouted as the plane barrel rolled upside down, slamming the cabin into the water.
Moving weeks right there.
Yeah. Well, that'll make people want to pick it up and figure out what happened. Yeah. Well, and maybe this is a good time to open it up to questions or comments. And this is a Minnesota audience, so we know that it's going to take you a minute. But it is the authors, that this moment for authors stretches and stretches and stretches like this. So as audience members in the future and whenever you come to a reading, know that that is the most uncomfortable moment in a writer's life.
Well, I'll ask something I've never asked you before, which is that you talked a lot about bear season and how it's coming fully formed to you right now. How did your writing process change between The Fox and Shadowland? Have you found it incrementally getting faster and faster, or did you have a different approach that worked? Or
The vignettes that come into my head, they're like scenes. And the interesting thing to me is I have so many of these scenes that the process of putting them together into a plot line and adding the main characters that have to kill somebody and somebody has to figure out who killed that somebody, that's the fun part. The scenes are really easy and quick to write because I lived them or I knew them or whatever, but pulling them, weaving them together in the story is what's fun and it has changed. This was much easier to write in some ways because of that.
Did the first book take you much longer?
Well, like I said, I wrote the first draft in 6 weeks, but then it took forever.
To after process.
Yes.
For going through that.
I think I just recently, since we're gonna move through, I have no idea, must have been 15 printed out manuscripts of the Fox.
Yeah.
It wasn't a waste of paper. It's a labor of love.
So how many drafts did it take you to do Shadowland?
Really, I really never printed out the whole thing and went, oh, that's wrong, and threw it away. I just modified, maybe moved a couple things, but not much. I don't know, maybe I'm stubborn. I wrote it like that, so it's gonna stay like that. Who knows? You know, but you gotta, when it's your creation, you gotta leave it where it feels right.
And when you're going through the editing process, at least for me, I find it really painful. And there's so many, I go back and forth so many times. And I don't do it in any chronological order, so I'm just shooting myself in the foot. But it sounds like you started this book and you just worked your way through.
Yeah, yes.
Like you sat down on day one to write page one, and
Yes.
and subsequently like a normal.
Is that
I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. I do know writers who start at the beginning and go to the end. I'm all over the place. I'll go from scene to scene to scene and then down. But it's quite a lot of weaving together,
Yes.
even when you're going in a straight line.
Yes, but I think I've worked it out right. So by the time I sit down to actually type it, it just controls.
So what's a good environment for you to be writing in your head? Are you walking? Are you doing some baking?
Pretty much any time.
The better question for Bill.
No, I don't, that part is in, the writing part, I do better in the morning. And, when it's quiet, I'm not one of those
What
people.
time in the morning do you start?
Well, not that early. But, as opposed to some people write at midnight or whatever. But I'm not a person that can write with music on or anything. It needs to be,
Not like 6:30 or 5:30.
no, 9, 10, with the coffee.
Yeah, you gotta have a coffee or nothing happens.
Do you find yourself when you're, out and about, having like a notepad and pen with you, or like jotting down notes in your phone as like ideas come up? Or are they mainly when you're sitting, you're like using quiet and writing them down? Or you're like tracking them along as you're out and about, and something pops in your head?
I don't write it down.
Just
They're all up there and eventually it's like they get shuffled into the right order and start writing.
I know, so I'm like, man, I email myself things, so they'll come back again, like, there's all kinds of tricks, but I don't have that.
And I will sit bolt upright in bed as I'm falling asleep or as I'm waking up and thinking, oh, I better write this down because I've just had the most brilliant thought. And then I say to myself, Sarah, that's so brilliant, you'll never forget it. And then it's so gone, and it probably was not anywhere near brilliant.
Or did you ever write it down and then look at it later and see what was
I
thinking?
did, yeah, maybe the few times that I did do that cured me of doing it, actually. But it is true that a bunch of like little nests are out there when you have a book in mind, and you find things that are in them that, little stories and snippets and images that get into our scenes and start moving the story along. It is kind of funny how they all exist and people just do a different job of how to put them in order. It sounds like, it does sound like you have a very orderly mind.
It's pretty messy to start with. Just think about it long enough and it makes sense.
I appreciated you using real places. Here in Minnesota, you see readers just love seeing their city and whatever. And I look at that as this provincial Minnesota, And so I'm reading your scenes from Chicago, Andersonville, the characters are walking along Foster Edwards. They are standing directly in front of the building where my son lives today. It's so cool, So none of us are immune from that. So I appreciate what you using. And by the way, the rest of that plane scene is even better than the part.
Yeah, that was a real challenge, without giving too much away. That part that follows, they're up in the woods, obviously, far away, and nobody knows because they're coming in early. So they're not expected for another few days. So the hard part was that sounded boring. They were waiting. And how do you make that interesting? They hoped they would get rescued, but would they get rescued? So there was a little tension there, but mainly it was, they're not here yet. Or, I mean, that was hard to write, because it felt boring.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
mean, it would come across as boring.
Bear country. There's your tension.
Yeah, I didn't put a bear in there, did I?
Oh, yeah.
I saved all that for the
Saved
next
the
one.
You had some time, something in like this before you went to Charlotte. But how did your experience up at Inlet contribute to your writing, or was it?
That was really cool. Went up there, right before the Fox was published, so a year ago, August. And, we went up to Kenora and took a plane ride to see what it was like, looking down, and I had already written the scene. And I really had to psych myself up to get in the plane to start with. But then sitting in the front seat and looking down, and, you know, I made him, I had my map out, and the pilot was so nice. He said, well, where did you write? Because just like on One for a Million, I had a specific dot on the map, so I knew what the shoreline looked like, and I knew where the plane was gonna crash in the water, and so forth. So he was really helpful, and took me, and zoomed in on the place, went real low. It was fun.
I did the same thing for my memoir, Shelter, and the pilot that took me out, the bush pilot, had known my dad. And my dad served in World War II on a bomber. He was a navigator on bombers. And this guy had been a friend of the family, and he took me out, and he gave me the ride of my life. I mean, he was doing trick stuff. It was like he was doing everything he could to make me vomit. And we were, specifically, I took that flight to fly over where we were. My family had settled and where my cabin had been a little tiny, but it is really something to see it from above.
Yes.
Sarah, who was the bush pilot?
Sorry?
Who was the bush pilot?
He's long dead.
But who was he? Because I've known a lot of bush pilots who can't.
I'd have to look up his name because I've got a memory.
Okay.
But he's dead now. He died about 10, 15 years ago. So he would have been, he was my dad's age. My dad was born in 1910. So this guy would be dead for a while. Because I did that in 2000, and he should have been retired by then. Is there anything else that we can talk about before you want to sign books? Or?
Well, just that this pilot was doing the trick stuff when he was 90 years old.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, well, no, he couldn't have been. He couldn't have been my dad's age. Oh no, he wasn't my dad's age. He was my brother's age.
We did the disclaimer already.
Yeah, I know.
So-
Brother.
So my brother is only 80 now, so whatever that would be. Anyway, I can't recommend going up in a plane that small with someone that age.
What do you like about chess?
I just love being taken to the northern part of the state, and just the sort of detail that you go into, and the natural world, and the sorts of people that people your books are really very much the type of person that live. So I found them to be very realistic, and it turns out they are, right? So yeah, it was a very enjoyable read.
Like in the Fox, you know, the fish thing, you know, where they go out and catch the fish, and then he made his own
Live box.
live box, yeah, you know, on penned in, you know, so to speak, the live box, but it was a big live box. It wasn't like nowadays, it's just in the back end of the book, you know, and so I could just picture that and the description of how that was made and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, that really works. You know, I wonder if people still do that because it's just, of course, with the limits and everything, maybe
Right.
today you don't need to do that.
Well, and you know, that just went right by me because we always had a big live box on the shore. So I thought everybody had one. Isn't that, did not everybody have one of those?
Well, I mean, I don't know, not anymore.
Well,
Maybe it's
no, our
not.
neighbor does,
One,
down on the point.
that might,
Like,
but,
You both mentioned, you know, something that you've actually experienced and been there and, you know, have an accurate picture of it and so forth. Is there anything in your book, I've not finished it, but is there anything in there that you had to say, I'm not sure about that, I wonder, or go look something up or talk to somebody or?
Yes, there were a couple, I'm trying to remember what they were. Obviously, the little history pieces, I have researched those.
but like, for instance, did they actually have Germany and something?
Yes. And I did look those kind of details, I did look up. And the types of cars, the types of motors on the boats, and all those things are accurate. Just-
That's good. I'm glad there's something that has always irritated me about reading a book. And I mean, that's just wrong. Where were you and where was your editor?
Yeah.
Somebody should. You know, I read a lot of mystery stories. And I find a murder mystery and realize the author knows absolutely zip about guns. It's like, that's what you're writing.
Yeah.
I might have taken a little
But-
license with the cyanide on this one. Everybody knows that's what it is, and I suppose I could have figured out a longer, or it could have taken longer to find a better poison. But I figured everybody knows that, and I wanted it to be, you know, figure out.
So that was, if it was 1950, I mean, that was, you know, there's the thing then that everybody after the war it would have been on people's minds, so it makes sense. More so than nowadays, you know, when
Right.
having,
Well, Trish has saved me from an embarrassing kind of mistake in their season coming up because I had a character in a wheelchair. It's like who's inspired. Brian's main character is a woman in a wheelchair. And she just said, it's not gonna work. You can't be in a wheelchair for 20 years and at this time frame and whatever, it just, just getting inspired. Sometimes it's really good to have someone else to talk to. And the critique group. We need to talk to people.
Yeah, so you have people read your work before you submit it. Not readers.
Kind of.
So who?
I mean, the critique group was really good, but they never read the whole book.
Just bits and
Just,
pieces.
yeah, what did we have, 15 or 20 page limit each time?
So it was in a group.
There's quite a few of us in there to share the time.
So would you pick out a section that you were like, I could really value your feedback on this? Okay.
I never read anything about the wheelchair thing. I was all just partial, you know, as she's thought of things, so I just thought,
Well, I would like to thank you and also just kind of housekeeping thing. One of the best things that you can do for us as writers is go online and rate us. You can do that on Amazon, although we want you to buy your books in an independent bookstore. But the stars we deserve, or at least I only want the stars I deserve, I don't know. But that really is truly helpful, and it puts us up in all of those algorithms of, if you liked Olive Kitteridge, you'll love Vacation Land, or if you liked, name a book, you'll love Shadowland. And it doesn't take much, it just takes a minute to do. It's really good. My next event is with William Kent Kruger this Thursday at the Depot in St. Paul. There is a bookstore there called Storyline. And so I'm very excited about that. We're going to be in conversation kind of like this. We're also in conversation a lot because we're in the same group. So we'll torture each other for a little bit. But what do you have coming up?
Some book signings, on an art signing, which is out on Far West, and it's out in Waconia. And we have something in Redmond, something, another one?
Inkwell and Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
And that one I think is, I can't remember the day after that. Sorry, we should have had it.
November.
Yeah.
And then,
Yes.
we haven't picked a date yet for Once Month.
So you'll do dinner, is that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking
At the bookstore.
at the bookstore.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're right, they do support Minnesota Mystery Night. for sure.
Yeah, okay,
There as
yeah,
well,
that's
so,
what I
yeah.
did.
Oh, they're booked out so far, I haven't
Oh.
done that.
Book
If only
now,
you knew
book
something.
now for your next book.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Well, should we move over to the table
Yes,
and
let's
say
do that.
thank you?
Thank you.
All right, we'll meet everybody at the Glasses Play Case.